August 21st, 2013. Crossing the unknown. The bed last night was less comfortable than laying on the ground, but the rest I did get helped settle my nerves. I went to sleep feeling apprehensive about crossing the next stretch of desert, but I woke up feeling more willing to try. The next town was 100 miles away, across a barren stretch of desert, and after nearly a month in Mongolia, I finally felt like I knew what supplies to bring. Essentially, as much food and water as I could possibly carry. I found a small store to buy 3 loaves of bread, berry-flavored jam, 1.5 pounds of rice, and 2 jars of vegetables. I then packed 20 liters of water, filling every spare bit of space in my bags and tying the rest on top. The woman running the little shop laughed at me as I tried to fit everything. My bike left the store 50 pounds heavier than when I arrived. If I can stick to my rations, I'll be supplied for 3 days. I stopped on the outskirts of town to assess my situation. Surrounding me was a vast brown expanse of low, rippling mountains, sparsely dotted with pale grass. I got out my map one more time to confirm that soon I would be lost. I was at the end of the black line, and ahead of me was only a blank white page. I looked east into the unknown, and felt as if I were standing on the edge of an abyss. The last yurt at the end of town was nearby, and I called to a woman who was busying herself there. With an inquisitive tone, I pointed which way I was going and said the name of the next town, Katumbulag. Nodding, she then came over to give me directions. Extending her full arm to the east, she then jogged her hand left and drew in the air what I thought was a mountain before pointing east again. I'm not sure what language she was speaking, but her explanation was long enough to make me think that navigating would be difficult. At the very least, she confirmed that I was starting in the right direction. I pushed down the fear and uncertainty that welled within me. My psyche was too fragile to both feel those emotions and carry on in the face of them. Instead, I focused on what gave me confidence. In small and large ways, I have proven to myself that I have great strength in both my body and my will. I clung to that notion as I pedaled into the unknown. What I was getting myself into soon became clear. The temperature climbed into the high 90s. The ground became so dry that even tough Mongolian grasses failed to grow. The dim track that I followed split repeatedly. I tried to stay focused on the most well-worn path, but there were times I stopped to take a really hard look before simply guessing. A dozen miles in, and I couldn't tell if I was lost or not. I focused on moving forward to stave off my feelings of doubt. Late in the morning, I came across a single dead tree standing 8 feet tall. The top was split into 3 broken limbs, and a sky-blue strip of cloth hung from the center trunk like a necklace. With this detail, the tree took on the appearance of a dancer in the throes of exuberant joy. Face to the sky, arms thrust out and up, with a slight lean, as though the tree were about to be overcome by the moment, forget its roots, and fly. I was struck by the image, and for the rest of the day, I aspired to be as happy as that dead tree. In the afternoon, I approached an indistinguishable dark spot on a distant hill, and I made my way there while trying to guess what I was seeing. Only in the last 100 meters did I recognize a herd of camels lying on the ground. As I approached, they all lumbered to their feet and slowly walked to a dry trough positioned between me and them. I pulled to a stop in front of the 30 camels, all looking at me with great expectation on their long faces. A well was there too, but I had no way to get to the water. I couldn't help them, and for a few long minutes, we simply stared at each other, the 30 camels and I. They looked around anxiously as I pedaled away, without giving them a drink. Late in the day, I did find more water for myself. The land had a large natural bowl, 50 meters in diameter, but not very deep. At the lowest point, a concrete shell was submerged into the earth. No animals were in sight, but all the tracks and poop indicated that they knew the spot. A bucket was in the well, tied to a rope. I brought up water to refill my empty bottles, but even after using my filter, there was still a yellow tinge. I took a drink and tasted the essence of Mongolia, the dry earth and the animals. Forever after this journey, whenever I catch the scent of livestock on the wind, I will think of this place. As I swallowed, the thought occurred to me that the water is no different than drinking out of a barn drain, and tasted as such. I decided to save those bottles as a last resort. I watched the full moon rise through soft pink clouds. Evening was approaching, and I was looking for a place to sleep when a Toyota Land Cruiser and an old flatbed truck came up the road behind me. They stopped and 3 men got out, curious to see what I was doing. I told them I was on my way to Katambulag, and the man driving the truck offered me a ride, saying that he was going there too. I was feeling the stress of being alone and unsure in the barren desert. If I could get to town, my map showed a road starting again. Then I wouldn't feel so lost. I accepted the ride and felt relief as I loaded my bike onto the truck. The 2 men in the cab were in their 40s and had each other laughing the whole ride. We talked about the simple things that we could without sharing a language. The driver showed me pictures of his children and wife. The man between us had a big smile on his face and joked that he didn't have a wife because he drinks too much. He seemed a little drunk. We drove fast as the sun set and the stars came out. In the dim headlights, the driver swerved left and right at forks in the road. When antelope appeared out of the darkness ahead, the driver would shift to neutral and rev his engine to make them move. I mimed a rifle to ask if they could be hunted, and the man in the middle answered by pretending to be wearing handcuffs. At some point, the Land Cruiser we were following became lost. The drivers got out to confer, pointing into the darkness. The Land Cruiser left, then 10 minutes later, the driver was flashing his lights in the distance for us to follow. They were going to a relative's home to pick up goats, and this is where we eventually arrived. Not the town, as I was expecting, but at a yurt no closer to town than when they found me. The reason I took the ride was to not feel so lost, but by the time we stopped, I had no clue where I was and could no longer retrace my steps. The men brought me into the yurt where a cheerful woman was cooking goat meat stew over a single burner connected to a small propane tank. 2 children slept on the floor against the wall, and an old man sat quietly in the back. As the guest, I was given a 6-inch tall plastic stool to sit on. Everyone else sat right on the ground. While we waited for the stew to finish cooking, I was served a clean 6-inch bone out of the pot. I chewed off the last scraps of meat, then set the bone back on my plate. The driver of the truck asked if I was finished, then took the bone to nibble off every little piece of gristle and tendon before breaking the hard outer layer to suck out the marrow. I saw the bone as a food scrap, while he was still looking at an appetizer. The family scene was lovely and warm. The night carried on with laughter and good food, and all the while, the old man sat in the back, speaking little, looking content, and farting loudly. Everyone ignored his near-constant gas, but after a half hour, I was becoming concerned for his health. That's when I realized the gaseous chorus was actually coming from the goats behind him, lying on the other side of the thin wall of the yurt. No one paid any attention because goat farts were the background noise of every evening. When we finished eating, I wanted to get away from the yurt to find a place to sleep, but the guys I drove in with didn't like the idea of me being on the ground. They had me put my sleeping bag next to them on the wooden floor of the goat truck. Now they are all snoring loudly. The goats are continuing to fart, and noisy camels are here too, murmuring in the darkness. Right here where I'm lying is possibly the noisiest spot for 50 miles in every direction.